Hello, my name is Candace. I guess I would start by saying I've been a very fortunate person because I've not had any major illnesses ever in my life. I'm very rarely sick. I don't have to see doctors pretty much ever. And something happened to me here with my eye. So what happened is I started to have a pain in my left eye, kind of like sand. It was gritty. It hurt when I would blink. And it sort of got worse and worse. I found myself in a lot of pain. And so I went to a local emergency clinic that had been recommended to me as quite good. Of course, there is no ophthalmologist in the clinic. There's a regular medical doctor, and they saw me right away, and they examined my eye just, basically without special equipment for eye examination. They thought that I had some sort of injury, and they gave me a prescription for several drops to take. So I ran into the pharmacy and filled the prescription and started taking these drops for the next couple of days. And it was sort of like when I would put the drops in my eyes, there was some relief. But a few days in, I realized there wasn't that much relief. And the doctor had told me that I shouldn't stay on these medications for very long. In other words, I had to quickly start weaning myself off the drops. And then, my goodness, I woke up on a Friday and I could hardly open my eye. And I found myself sort of crying every time I blinked. It was like glass in my eye, and I started to get really scared. So I called a local hospital. I found somebody who was very kind and said, let me try to help you. And she then referred me to Dr. Estela. Dr. May said, okay, have her come in. I think it was late in the afternoon. She started examining my eye with this sort of piece of equipment, which I jokingly have now come to say I don't like at all. So she's, looking with different lights and getting very close and doing things that I was not at all comfortable with. And she then pulls away from this thing, and she looks at me and she says, Candace, you have herpes in your eye. And I looked at her and I said, I have what? I had never heard of such a thing as herpes of the eye. I had never been aware that I had herpes or anything related to that. And so she explained to me that unfortunately, when I went to the emergency clinic, of course, they don't have the proper equipment. You don't have an ophthalmologist, a specialist. And so the drops that they gave me don't help. And as I recall, they make it worse, the situation. This was really hard. I was in a lot of pain. I was scared. I'm here in Puerto Vallarta alone, basically. And it was a scary thing. And Dr. Estela would see me, literally every couple of days. It was very intense. I had a regimen of medications that I had to take every few hours, and I literally had to create a chart for these medications, for the drops. And eventually, what should have been maybe a treatment that would have not been so uncomfortable and it would have taken effect within a week, it was over 2 weeks, I think close to 3, before we really got it under control and before I woke up one day and said, oh my God, I really feel better. I think it's a natural reaction when you're in pain. You want to go to the emergency room, especially if you know, you don't have a doctor that you can call on, or, you know, you don't really know what you're doing, you just go to emergency. And I've learned that when it comes to eye health, don't do it, because what's really required is a lot of very specialized equipment. And what ended up being weeks of torment for me could have been, you know, quickly resolved if I would just have known better. So the lesson that I take away is, when it comes to eyes, you have to see a specialist. So that's my story.